Now we're good? All right. Close enough. And does that work? Got to turn that on too. Miracle of the on switch. All right. In the beginning, there was God, and there was heaven probably, but there weren't the heavens. There weren't stars and the moon and the sun and the atmosphere. Those heavens weren't there. God created the heavens and He created the earth. But the earth at that time was without form. Probably, we're guessing here, or maybe using a little logic, probably in the form of a sphere, because that's the form a water droplet takes when it's in a vacuum. So probably in a sphere, and it was completely covered with water, and it was deep. We know it was deep. And then we have the Spirit of God, so we've got God, and then we've got God the Spirit hovering over the face of the waters. That was in the beginning. And also in the beginning, what other book starts with in the beginning besides Genesis? John. In the beginning was the Word. Was the Bible in the beginning? No, hadn't been written yet, hadn't been told yet, but I don't like to put up pictures of Jesus because we don't know what He looked like. And I don't want to blaspheme or anything. So we use the Word, the Bible, to represent Jesus at the time, because He was the Word, right? He was the living Word of God. And we know that He was there in the beginning, because why? All things were made through Him. And without Him, nothing was made that was made. So we have God, God the Spirit, God the Son in the beginning. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. And this was before there was sun. And this was before there was moon. I used to be a scientist 30 years ago. That's hard for me to get my head around. Still, Jordan's a scientist. It's hard for him to get his head around, right? And that was the first day, and it was good. And then God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." Now, this may be the hardest thing in the whole passage to get our head around until we figure out what a firmament is. A firmament is a space. It's a big empty space. And there's a Hebrew word, I understand, for firmament. It's kind of like the Greek word for love. It has different definitions, and you have to look at the context to figure out the definition. But in this case, the definition is dividing the waters from the waters. Meaning what? There was water in the sky. Okay? That's what that means. There was water on the earth, there was water in the sky, and there was space in between them. And some people think that that water in the sky created a big layer and made the early earth like a big terrarium and protected mankind from UV rays and all that. And that's why they lived so long back then. But I understand, I didn't do the math myself, but I understand that if you do the math on that, that it makes it like 4 times too hot for us to live. So I don't know about that. But I do know that if you look at Psalm 19 and verse 1, the psalmist says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows His handiwork." So whatever that firmament was, it was still around when the psalmist was writing about it. And whatever amount of water was up there, it was still up there when the psalmist was writing about it, or part of it was. Now, water is a really amazing compound. It's got a molecular, I'm not going to get too far into science, I promise you, okay? So don't, stay with me for a minute. Water has a molecular weight of 18, and that's really, really low. And all the other compounds that we know about that have a molecular weight that low, they're either gases or they're metals that are so reactive they can't exist by themselves. They have to exist in a solution or in a gas. But water, this light little molecule of water, it can exist as a liquid or a gas or a solid at room temperature. And it makes up the majority of our bodies, and it's necessary for life, for every living creature on the planet. It's necessary. And it's not found anywhere else in the solar system that we can figure out. Now, there's a random coincidence, isn't it? All right, and that's day 2, and that was good. Day 3, God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the water he called seas, and God saw that it was what? Good. Now that picture up there, there's a disclaimer under it. Can you read that? This is not intended to be factual. I don't know that it's factual. I don't know that it's not. But if you look at the shape of the continents, they kind of fit back together. And if you do some research into this and you say, well, what scientific anomalies could have caused a flood? And you looked at this idea of tectonic plates. We know that when those shift, they cause earthquakes, and we expect California to fall off in the Pacific in any moment because of that. We're just kidding, hope it doesn't. But if you start reading about that, you find that the physics are there, that if this was the case, when those started moving and going up under each other and the water started moving, you've got the makings for a global flood. That's pretty interesting. Okay? And that was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass. We're still on day 3, okay? So we've separated the water from the earth. And now, God starts to populate the earth with plants. Flowers, grass, and trees. Day 3, God made flowers, grass, and trees, didn't he? We remember that song. And not only that, we get the definition of a fruit here. What's a fruit? It's a plant that has its seed within itself. So that's why we say a tomato is a fruit, not a vegetable, right? Because its seed is within itself. God gave us the definition of a fruit. All right? And we find out that these seeds reproduce according to their kind. According to their kind. I'm going to take a brief, man, we got 7 minutes. I got to hurry. Okay, look up kind and see what a kind is, and you'll figure out how God got all those animals on the ark. And you'll find that a kind, like a canine kind, could hunt, could guard, could tend, and all those things. But after that, all these dogs separated into all these different species, and they become more and more and more specialized, which is another way of saying less and less able to do other stuff besides what they've been bred to do. And that's a kind. That's within a kind. You don't ever see a dog turn into a cat, or a cat turn into a parrot, or a parrot turn into a fish. It just doesn't happen. All right, and that was day 3, and that was good. Day 4, then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens. Okay, so here's another firmament. How is this firmament different from the one that we just talked about, that separated the waters from the waters? Because this firmament is in the heavens. He explains to us where this one is. And what he put up there? Lights of the firmament to divide the day from the night. Well, wait a minute. We already had the day and the night. That was on day 1. Day 1. God made light when there was none. Waited till day 4 to give the governance of that light over to the sun and the moon. Get your head around that. All right. So we're going to move on pretty quick. The evening and the morning were the 4th day, and that was good also. Day 5. God made birds and fish alive on day 5, didn't he? So we look at day 5. Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and the birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens. And you guys spend much time in the ocean, around the ocean, by fish in the ocean? I got to go fishing in the ocean last week. There's two creatures that came out of the ocean. The one on your upper left, that's a sea robin. Not a bird robin that flies in the air. That's a sea robin that flies in the ocean. And that sea robin is not going to develop lungs in the next 2 weeks or any time. And the robins that fly in the air aren't going to start swimming in the sea anytime soon. They're different. And then those other two fish, this one on the right and this one on the left, anybody know what that is? It's the same fish. That's two different sides of the same fish. The one on the right is a flounder. He's camouflaged on that side, and both of his eyeballs are up there. And then the white part, that's his bottom part that lays on the ground. Not an eyeball to be seen on that side. No camouflage, no nothing. He lays on the floor of the ocean, and then he pops up to grab a fish. Pretty neat. I don't know what evolved from him or he was supposed to evolve from. That's a pretty weird fish. Tastes great on a plate, looks weird before you get him there. All right, day 6, let the earth bring forth the living creatures according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beasts of the earth, each according to his kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Day 6 continued. Let us make man in our image. Who's there? God the Father, God the Spirit, God the Son, right? Let us make man in our image, and let them have dominion over all these other creatures. About 40 years ago, 35 years ago, I lived in Chattanooga. If you've ever been downtown around UTC, there's Macaulay Avenue right there. Pulled up to the edge of the building. I'm getting ready to go to class, and I see what looks like the trunk of an elephant coming around the corner of the building. And then the rest of the elephant came around the corner of the building. And there came his tail, and then another elephant had his trunk on this one's tail, and there was a train of elephants. 5 or 7 long, I don't remember. I was sitting there at the traffic light with my jaw up. I'm going, what? Well, the circus was in town. And they had dominated those elephants at that circus to the point that one would grab the other's tail and they'd walk up through the middle of Chattanooga. And it was safe. I didn't see a person around anywhere. I'm sure there were, but I didn't see them. Tigers. You ever seen a tiger up close? Rascals are about that high. And they're about maybe that long. And they will eat you. I mean, quick. Like their heads are this big around. They'll eat you. But we've dominated them and put them in a circus and make them jump through a fire. Animals are scared of fire. But man has dominated these creatures, just like God said we would. And then, God stepped back. And what did he say? He said, indeed, it was very good. So he said, look, I've given you everything that you need on this earth. Given you everything you need for food. I've given you all these animals. You got to name them. They'll do what you want them to. And he said, indeed, it was very, very good. All right. So why do we struggle with God's explanation? I tried to pick a sin that wouldn't step on anybody's toes, so I picked a robber there. I don't think we got any of those armed robbers in the group, but might have some other things, all right? But so why do we have trouble with that? For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in that unrighteousness. Why would we suppress the truth? Because it puts a burden on us. Now we have to do something. If we believe that that's the truth, then we have to do what God says. And we don't want to do that. So we suppress the truth, but we're without excuse because God's shown it to us. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. being understood by the things that are made. Who's that? Us. We're the things that are made, and we understand that, so we're without excuse. And you can read the rest of that yourself. Professing to be wise, they became fools. When I went off to college, my dad said to me, beware of educated fools. That's what he said. He said, beware of educated fools. And what do you run into in college? A slew of educated fools. I mean, there are people with PhDs telling you that this stuff is not true and you're stupid for believing it. Well, there are some things my boss used to call troublesome facts, all right? So look at that flounder and tell me how that just showed up one day. I don't think so. You know, we can go through a bunch of other stuff, and we will. But the point is that, okay, so back in the day of Jacob, Elijah, what did mankind do? Created his own gods, right? Made images. And what really happened was there was some charismatic priest that made all this up and figured out he could have power over the rest of them. And that's what he did. All right? And so we had idolatry. Now, as man became more sophisticated, he said, nah, no way that little gold image did anything for me. I mean, I saw Dagon fall over. He got no power, right? So what did they do? Now we've got naturalism. This guy named Darwin showed up, went to the Galapagos Islands. I would love to go there someday. Started looking at moths, and he said, well, you know, this natural selection accounts for everything because it's the survival of the fittest. And if you're not fit, you don't survive. You don't survive, you don't have children. You don't have children, your species goes away, and the new species takes over, and Shazam, evolution. Makes sense to me. Doesn't it make sense to you? Of course it makes sense. No, troublesome facts. Doesn't make sense. And so we have to look at this and say, is it evolution or naturalism? Did things just come from nature with no supernatural or divine influence whatsoever? Or did God do it? Or was it both? You don't hear about theistic evolution much anymore. It used to be a thing when we were kids. Was a thing. Even the scientists now go, that just doesn't hold water. I mean, it can't be both. The day-age theory, that used to be a thing, where one day of creation was supposed to be a whole eon. But then how do you explain the plants and animals, or the plants being created on day 3, and the sun and moon being created on day 4? Where did the photosynthesis go for a gazillion years while that eon passed? Couldn't happen. Couldn't happen. You look further into nature, you find that there's this orchid that's about yay deep, and there's this bird with a beak about yay deep, and when that's all the bird feeds on is this orchid, and the way that that orchid pollinates itself is through the beak of that bird. So the orchid was created on day 3, and the bird was created on day 5. And if that was 2 gazillion years, how did the orchid keep going? Couldn't have. Couldn't have. Troublesome facts, logic. And it can't be neither nor. I mean, we're here. So something did it, right? So it has to either be God or not God. God or not God. And so there are problems. We're going to skate right on the edge of science here, okay? Stay with me. There's this thing called the second law of thermodynamics. Thermodynamics, heat, movement. Buzzwords for energy, okay? So it could be heat, it could be radiation, it could be different kinds of energy. But the first law of thermodynamics says that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It just changes form. I raise this up in the air. It was at this level of energy. I raise it up in the air. I've raised this level of energy. Now the energy is stored. Potential energy, I let go. Kinetic energy, it falls literally to a lower energy state. The whole world's like that, and not just with elevation. So the second law of thermodynamics says that you have to keep putting energy into something to keep it in order. If you don't keep putting energy into something, it falls apart. And so when I teach our teenagers, I say, look, when your mom and dad get mad at you on account of your room's a mess, just say, hey, it's just science. I left it alone and it fell apart. I mean, it's the second law of thermodynamics, Mom, what can I tell you? And it got left to itself, it goes to its lowest energy state, okay? Now that may not sound like much, but when a piece of metal rusts and turns into a pile of rust, is it a higher energy state or lower energy state than when it was a solid piece of metal? Lower. It's a lower energy state. That's where things go. That's where things go. Okay, we're going to have to quit now. I want to show you something. This is all from Apologetics Press, which is a good brotherhood organization. There are a lot of other things that you can go on there and see. But if you start looking at nature, I mean, just in the past 12 months, I've seen an immature bald eagle have an argument with 4 gobblers. I've seen that flounder. I saw a whole bunch of sheep jump over a creek, about a fourth of them did, and then they all jumped back over and they all got together and had a meeting, and then they marched off 2 by 2. I saw that with my own eyes. I don't know what's causing that. I didn't cause it, but God caused it. So here's just some things, at the beginning, I thought we're going to maybe run out of time. No, we didn't. But we got giraffes. Any engineers in the group, mechanical engineers, know about pumps and things? Do you know how hard it is to pump something up, straight up? Real hard. And I'm telling you from the candy factory, and one departed engineer, which wasn't me, you can't pump marshmallow up at all. You can't. It just compresses, and then it blows out the top. You can't pump it. And so blood is hard to pump straight up. And if you did pump it straight up that giraffe's neck, what would happen when he leaned his head down to get a drink of water? It'd blow his head off. But God designed him so that he could walk around and not pass out, and he could get a drink and his head wouldn't blow up. Pretty amazing. Bombardier beetle, that's my favorite of all. You've got to look that one up. You've got to look that one up. Because there is no way that he could have evolved because his back end would have exploded off. I mean, you got to look him up. Seahorses, lightning bugs. When I was in college, I had a professor working on lightning bugs. And they invented the glow stick out of his work. At the time, we didn't have glow sticks because it created too much heat. So they were trying to develop what is now turned into LED lights, which are lights with no heat, essentially, no heat. And so those are things that God knew about way long ago. Took us a long time. You look at the electric eel. We still can't do what the electric eel can. You look at the cuttlefish, master of camouflage. Our military would love to be able to do what the cuttlefish can do. It can just lay right up against this chair and go invisible, look just like the chair. You wouldn't believe it. Hagfish, I think that's Paul. Paul Norwood, you in here still? He had to leave. Hagfish makes slime. We did this in class the other night. That's the reason why. It was pretty amazing. So just look these things up and ask yourself, what's the chances of that happening by random selection? Not very good. Not very good. So anyway, that's our class. If I was asked to quit at 5 till, and it's 8, so we're going to quit now. And I think, does anybody need to partake the Lord's Supper?